Welcome to State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato. We're coming to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio in Brick City, Newark, New Jersey. It's our pleasure to welcome Dr. Jim Drylie, Executive Director of the School of Criminal Justice and Public Administration at Kean University. Good to see you, Jim.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
I was just telling you before we got in the air, I read an article that you were quoted in. I believe it was in the Ledger. Check it out on NJ.com as well, and other places, where the question about gun violence. This was after some horrific incidents, whether in Dayton or in El Paso, and unfortunately they happen all too often. And you were quoted extensively talking about some of the things we need to do to end gun violence. Let me get into this. Right out of the box, the connection between gun violence and white supremacy is?
I don't see a connection, a causal connection, in the sense that we want to put our finger on one particular reason. With the gun violence that we see in the United States, it's multivariate. There are individuals that believe in a certain ideology that will use violence to advance their ideologies. But there's other individuals, because of mental health or emotional issues, they use gun violence for whatever purpose that they choose. And then other individuals in a reactive way based on circumstances within their lives. So I don't see it as one specific.
But folks involved in the white supremacy movement are, in fact, based on the folks we've talked to in Homeland Security and other places, in terms of domestic threat, domestic terrorism, they're at the top of that list.
They are now, because in the way that it's occurring and the individuals are advancing that ideology. But we can't ignore that there are other circumstances. Yes.
You've said, let's go through some options, because I hate when people say, what's the fix? There's no one fix to gun violence, correct?
Correct.
Let's do this. Banning assault weapons, no-brainer?
It's a no-brainer in the sense that you ban them. So where do you ban them? At manufacture? Do you ban them at possession? Is it a collective ban? How do you go? There's commentary now where they're going to look for buybacks on assault weapons. We're talking a major undertaking on a national scale here. It's not going to happen overnight. And is it going to happen completely? Absolutely, not 100%.
Doctor, let me ask you, so there are New Jersey laws and there are national laws. New Jersey's gun laws, among many say, the toughest in the nation. You say?
I agree.
Based on what? What are some of the keys to them?
Well, in New Jersey, it's been long-standing practice that if you're going to apply for a permit to purchase a rifle or ammunition, you go through an application process. At the local level,
is that a background check?
It is. At the local level, it's conducted by the police. If you don't have a local police, it's conducted by the New Jersey State Police if you're in a rural district. It includes personal demographic information. You submit fingerprints. You'll go through the process there. They generate a single number that stays with you for life, an SBI number, State Bureau of Identification. And no matter what you do in the firearms application purchasing process in the state of New Jersey, it's very closely watched and regulated.
Okay, so in the national government, federal government, President, right after some of these horrific incidents, said, you know what? Background checks. 2 days later, not so sure. Then after that, background checks. Should the federal government, not just each state, look at background checks, but should the federal government simply, by law, require a background check to get a gun?
That's a constitutional question that to be best answered by...
But isn't it a practical question beyond the law? I'm asking if, in fact, our goal is to reduce gun violence, wouldn't a federal law that mandates a background check before you could purchase a firearm make sense, as opposed to some states have it, some states don't? It's a constitutional question. It's also a practical question as to implementation of a law.
From the practicality standpoint, I agree with you 100%. If it can be done nationally, I support that.
Could
I have no problem
done?
with this. I don't know. I mean, you're talking now about...
You think that's politics?
I do.
Because you separate yourself. I'm sorry for interrupting. You told me right before we got on the air, I've been in law enforcement. You're a law enforcement in West Orange, a top leader there in West Orange Police Department. 25 years?
Yes, 25.
And you moved into academia. So is therefore policy and politics outside of your purview?
Well, you can't ignore the politics.
Go ahead.
And so the policy is going to be set by those that are in office, elected office. They appoint individuals, directors, commissioner, forms of government, whatever you may have, and they follow and adhere to the policy that is set. But in a lot of this right now, we can't seem to get through the political rhetoric,
Noise.
the dialogue, the noise. That's an excellent
But
way
would
to
a
describe
background
it.
check, a federal background check, because I'm going to ask you about red laws in just a second, would a federal background check be helpful?
Yes.
Red laws, what are they? Why don't we have them?
Well, so red law is basically red flag. That's what we're referring to. So if there's something in a person's life, in their background, in their past, that would raise a red flag and a cause for concern. And we've seen this when we look back at some of the shootings, the mass shootings that have occurred in the past 20, 25 years. There were red flags. Individuals were exhibiting and manifesting certain forms of behavior. They were acting out, oftentimes in a violent way. But the dots were not being connected. And in those cases, if the dots had been connected, if individuals had talked with each other, amongst each other, including involving law enforcement to some extent, then we may have been able to mitigate, we may have been able to prevent.
Take those guns? I mean, because ultimately, what's the action on the part of the government? Isn't it to take the guns from those people?
Well, I think initially it would be to prevent access. So if it's going to be taking and it's temporarily holding, you know, so the weapon may not belong to the individual, but it may be within the household.
But you're saying that this red flag logo, if you will, tries to identify folks who should not have guns.
Or access to guns, both.
I'm curious about this. Got background in mental health. This whole question about, is it a mental health issue? Is it that there are too many guns? Is it the NRA? It's no one thing. Correct.
We look for, everybody wants a single cure, a panacea.
What's the answer?
Communication.
No, but I'm saying, rhetorically, when someone says, what's the answer, is there really an answer, one?
No. We need to communicate, we don't. Whether it be between education, local elementary school, individuals even in higher education. We've seen instances where these have occurred in colleges and universities. Workplace violence. There are things that go on in people's lives that people do make the connection, but that information isn't brought out to someone that could maybe intervene, and not in a taking away somebody's full liberties, taking somebody into custody, but to be aware, to look into things a little bit deeper, a little bit further, and that's not happening. When you look at a person who has a problem with alcohol, and everybody knows that this person has a problem with alcohol, but nobody talks. And it's not until something happens, that person's involved in an accident, or they do something, oh, well, we knew that person had a problem with alcohol. That may seem like a very simple analogy, but it's not. The same thing occurs with this type of violence. People are aware, but there's not a communication, there's not a connection.
Dr. Jim Drylie from Kean University, I want to thank you for joining us. You understand these issues, not just from an academic perspective, but frankly, you were out there as a law enforcement professional for many years, and we thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Stay right there.
Okay.
This is State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato, and we'll be right back.
When it comes to you and your family's health care, transparency is key. At Holy Name Medical Center, we believe in creating an environment where patients can be educated and informed so they can get the most out of their health care. As New Jersey's healthcare industry continues to evolve and change, Holy Name remains committed to providing patients with high-quality, accessible, and affordable health care.
Also brought to you by MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey. Adler Aphasia Center, offering therapeutic programming for stroke and brain injury survivors with aphasia. Wells Fargo. And by Keystone Mountain Lakes Regional Council of Carpenters. Your future is in our building.